Hey, this is, do that again. Hey, kids! Sorry. Hey, this is Vance and Christy with Root Homestead. We wanted to make a video about our egg selling operation. We don't sell a lot of eggs, but on a lot of homesteading forums and stuff that I'm on, we get a lot of questions about how we sell eggs, why we sell eggs, is it profitable, just things like that. And so we kind of just wanted to talk about our operation and how we sell eggs. Definitely not, in the business of necessarily selling eggs for profit, but we kind of just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've learned over the last, 2 years? We've been selling eggs now? Going on 3 years of selling eggs. And slowly we've kind of grown our operation. Started out with, 6 chickens, and now we're pushing 60. So we've grown it quite a bit, and we wanted to just talk a little bit about what we've learned and why we've grown the operation, and just some interesting stuff that we've learned about it from our experience. Not necessarily the right way or wrong way by any means to sell eggs, but this is how we do it. So the first thing I wanted to bring up, though, when I think about selling eggs is remembering why you're selling eggs, or why your customers actually are buying eggs from you. To remember who your target market is, who your customer is. And I think the important thing to remember when you're thinking about selling eggs is so many people worry about the price of the eggs. But if you think of why somebody buys eggs from you, it's not because it's cheap, it's not because it's convenient, it's because they like the taste of the egg, or it's because they want something that's a more healthy alternative, and so they understand that it's going to cost them sometimes 2 to 3 times what it will cost in a store.
It's also important for them to know that the chickens that they're getting the eggs from are being properly taken care of. They're receiving the proper nutrition. They have free range is a big way that people like to have their chickens treated, not be caged up. And so that's a big thing too, is if you have free range chickens, organic is another big perk for people. So just something to think about there, of showing how you actually...
Yeah, they want to see the operation for sure. So, a lot of the times your customers, I would say, 90% of the time our customers are people who want to support a local community. They want to support a local agricultural society or community. They honestly just think they taste better too. We've noticed that the eggs that we get, rather than a store-bought, the shells are a lot harder. The eggs are darker and richer. They just seem a lot healthier.
Yeah,
that
taste is such a big difference.
So this comes down to when you're going to market your eggs. Remember to show the environment that the chickens are in, because we didn't, at first we were just advertising on local classifieds and stuff, saying, hey, eggs for sale, $3 a dozen or whatever. We weren't getting a whole lot of traction, and then we started putting pictures of the coop, pictures of the free range area that we have them in, pictures of the eggs in their nesting boxes, and all of a sudden people wanted to buy our eggs. I think people, they want to see that. So when you're advertising your eggs, make sure that you're showing the environment that the birds are actually laying the eggs in, because that's really what this client base is looking for, in my opinion. Okay, so now when we sell the eggs, seems like about 80% of our customers still refrigerate them. They still feel the need to refrigerate eggs, and I think that's just ingrained in most of us that buy eggs from a grocery store. Is eggs need to be refrigerated, right? And so we sell our eggs 2 different ways. We sell them what we call natural, which is completely untouched. We gather them out. We gather them out of the nesting boxes, and we keep them in a cooler spot. Or we also do advertise them as washed. And honestly, the only difference is washed have a slight rinse in case, in the winter, the nesting boxes get muddy from the chickens going out and digging around in the snow and digging around in the mud and then coming back into their box. So that washed eggs, is really just a really, really light rinse. Do you remember
the temperature?
The temperature of the water?
Yeah, so you don't want to rinse your eggs in cold water, because that allows the pores to open and bacteria can enter into the egg. So just make sure it's warm water if you do rinse or clean your eggs at all.
And not hot water.
Right, just warm.
Yeah, you don't want to strip that bloom that's off the egg unless you plan on just sticking them in the refrigerator and selling them as refrigerated eggs. And so it's funny, as you wash the eggs with your hands, you can feel the bloom coming off. It has a little bit of a, you can feel kind of, I don't want to say slimy, but you can feel a protective coating, almost an oily coating that's on the egg. And then once you've scrubbed it quite a bit, the egg becomes, I don't know, it's almost like a chalkboard feeling.
Yeah.
It becomes coarse.
Yeah.
You can tell when that bloom has been removed. And as soon as that bloom's removed, the pores in the egg open up and bacteria can get in. And at that point, in order to slow any bacteria growth, you need to refrigerate it. While that bloom's on there, the eggs are preserved for up to 45 days sitting on your counter. They'll stay just fine at room temperature for up to 45 days.
Yeah, and to go along with that, how long they can last on your countertop, for example, without being refrigerated, that can also vary according to the size of your eggs. We've noticed that the smaller eggs tend to maybe last 3 to 4 weeks, depending. So just keep that in mind as well, that the larger the egg, the longer they're usually last without refrigeration.
Okay, so if you're going to be selling eggs, one thing that obviously you're going to be dealing with a lot is the cartons. And we found a supplier that we really like, where I think we buy 80 cartons at a time, and they're about $1 a piece, which is the best deal I've been able to find. Locally, they all seem to be a little bit more. We actually buy them on Amazon. But what we found is most of these people who buy eggs from us prefer us to take the cartons back. When they come to pick up eggs, they usually will bring us more cartons than the last time they bought. But it's almost the lifestyle of eating farm fresh eggs. A lot of these people want to be able to contribute back, and so I found that they will bring us more cartons. So we've sold a couple thousand dozen eggs, and we have purchased cartons twice. We've purchased 160 cartons, and we have sold 10 times that many in eggs. A lot of people will bring us cartons. So
yeah, and they don't expect to have perfect brand new cartons every time they receive eggs from you either. So, because if they're bringing them back for you to use, they expect to get those cartons back in return, or the equivalent to those cartons. So just keep that in mind. They don't have to be brand new cartons every time.
Actually, it seems like probably 1 out of 10 of our customers bring their own thing to put eggs in. They'll bring a basket because they want to display them out on their counter or something, and so they'll bring a basket, or I have one lady that just brings the tray right out of her refrigerator, and right there, and we just transfer the eggs into her tray that she can take home and put right back in her refrigerator. So yeah, you'll find that cartons, you'll end up with more than you buy, which is funny. Okay, so let's see here. Small eggs. She mentioned that small eggs don't last as long. Whether you have a really young bird, or we actually have a huge variety of birds. So we also have some silkies and we have some bantams. The silkies and bantams lay a lot smaller egg. And so only once though have we had a customer actually say, hey, can you stop giving me such small eggs? Every once in a while we'd have a dozen eggs that would have 3 or 4 small ones in it. And so we would, what we've started to do a little bit more with that is to try to only get 1 small egg in every dozen. Now, that being said, one thing that people also love about buying our eggs, or buying farm fresh eggs, is the variety of sizes and colors and things. And we also give them ginormous eggs. Every once in a while we'll have an egg that's so big it won't fit in the carton. And we like to give those to customers. They think it's kind of a novelty thing to get the different sizes of eggs. So now we do have one client that in her country, I'm not exactly sure where she's from, small eggs are a delicacy. So she actually wants to pick up our small eggs. And so a lot of the times we'll save all of those small eggs and give them to her, and she's happy as a lark to take the small eggs.
Yeah, and one thing with small eggs too is when your birds first start laying, no matter what breed they are, their eggs are going to be smaller at first. And then as they produce more and more eggs, they, depending on their breed, will usually get up to a larger size egg. Obviously, like Vance mentioned, with the silkies and the bantams, for example, they'll stay smaller. But just something to think about, when they first start laying eggs, they will typically be a smaller size, but then you can expect those to get a little bit larger over time.
We like the variety of sizes too, but if we were in the business of selling eggs, we wouldn't do bantams or silkies.
Right, yeah, we probably wouldn't.
Okay. one thing that we do, well, tracking cells or tracking cells of your eggs, I think you can make that as simple or as complicated as you want. I use a simple Excel sheet, and every time somebody buys eggs, I track a couple of main things. I track the client's name, the date, how many dozen they bought, how much they paid, and the average order size. So our average order size over the last 2.5, 3 years of selling eggs has been 4.5 dozen. 4.5 dozen is our average order size. We got a ton of customers that, buy 2 to 3 dozen at a time, and then we have a couple customers that want 10 dozen at a time, and so it averages out to be 4.5 dozen is our average order. Okay, wanted to talk a little bit about gathering the eggs. And one of the things I really wanted to mention is keeping clean nesting boxes and getting a clean setup saves you a lot of time and money when you're selling eggs. Dry boxes, having your boxes dry as well. And the reason is because number one, we've started to put more effort into keeping dry, clean nesting box. And one of the reasons we do that is because we've noticed that we spend a lot less time washing eggs if you just keep the coop clean and you keep warm shavings in there. Also, chickens don't like laying in a dirty box. And if you don't want to hunt for eggs around your property, it really helps to keep the nesting boxes inviting for the chicken, to keep it fresh. Nice deep wood shavings. We keep about 2 to 3 inches of wood shavings at least inside of their nesting boxes. Otherwise, I found that chickens will jump in their nesting boxes and they almost look disgusted. They scratch around and they try to find, they try to gather up the shavings to try to find a nice place to lay the eggs. So having enough straw or wood shavings or whatever you use in there will save you a lot of time from having to hunt eggs down, so you're not going on an Easter egg hunt every time you want to go gather the eggs, which we've done plenty of times at night with a flashlight trying to figure out why we're missing 10 eggs or so.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing to talk about is the number of boxes. We have 42 layers right now. 42 birds that should be laying eggs right now. We've got, and we have we have 10 boxes in there right now, and that seems sufficient. Birds are funny. They will all fight over the end box. The box on the far left will always have 10 eggs in it, and then the next one over will have 2, and the next one over will have 1, and then the last 3 on the top on that row will have no eggs. So one of the things that we sometimes do is when I come out early in the morning, if it's not really time to gather the eggs, I'll look in the box, and if there's 10 eggs in one box, I'll spread them out to all the other boxes. And I found that throughout the day, the birds will start to use the other boxes, and they won't fight as much over which box they get to use or which box they lay all the eggs in.
Yeah, it kind of puts that visual reminder to them, like, hey, there are other spots to lay my eggs. That goes along with kind of training your bird on where to lay their eggs, because if they see, you can put like a rock or a fake, like a wooden egg in the nesting boxes, for example, if they're seeming to lay all around the coop area, and it will help them visually see, like, oh, that's where the eggs belong. Okay, that's where I need to go to lay my eggs. And so if you just kind of spread them out in their laying boxes, it kind of reminds them that there are other options instead of just one particular box that everyone seems to want to go in.
Yeah. So one thing that we've actually taken, this one took quite a while for us to figure out for sure, or to, I guess, to realize, but our birds lay eggs, and I don't know if this has to do with time of year or climate or what zone you're in, but our birds consistently lay between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. We rarely have a bird that lays an egg after 2, and we rarely have a bird that lays before 10. And so when it's not between those times, we actually shut the nesting boxes up. I've got a system where I can flip up a board that blocks them from getting into the nesting box. One of the main reasons we do that is because it keeps the boxes a lot cleaner, because some of the birds will perch inside the box all night long. Maybe if they're lower on the pecking order and they don't have a place to perch with the other birds, they'll jump into the nesting box. Or I think if they're just what's that called? Broody? Yeah, broody. If they're broody, they'll try to stay in there as long as they can. So we try to gather the eggs every day, and then in the afternoon, I'll close the boxes up and I won't open them back up until the morning, because I know that very, very few of our birds ever lay after 2 o'clock and before 10 o'clock. I don't know if that's normal, but that's how our birds are.
Yeah. And they don't really poop in their nesting boxes unless they're there for perching purposes. So again, like Vance was saying, that's kind of why we block that, so that they don't perch in those nesting boxes at night. And it just helps keep them clean and keep it just for nesting, laying egg purposes. It's getting really cold out here. It's like probably 32 degrees maybe.
I wrote down all my notes, my cheat sheet. Okay, so as far as feeding chicks, I don't know if you've seen our video on how we mix our own feed. We do mix our own feed. We try to get it, the hard part about mixing your own feed is getting enough protein in there for the birds. We've calculated that the feed that we get is pretty close in protein, but from my research, what I understand is that we're probably getting a higher protein absorption rate from doing the feed that we are, rather than a pellet or a layer feed. But for the first 1.5 years, we did a layer feed, and it worked great. We've done both a 16 and a 21% layer feed, and been fine with both. What is it? Once or twice a week, though, we will ferment our feed for them. I don't like to feed them exclusively fermented feed, but the reason we give it to them once or twice a week is to get those healthy bacteria in there. I've noticed that we probably go through a little bit less feed fermenting it. It goes a little bit farther, it kind of swells and absorbs a lot of the water, and the fermentation kind of makes it go a little bit farther. But just like anything, too much too much.
Of all one thing.
Fermentation.
Fermenting.
Too much of a good thing, isn't always the best. So we like to give them both dry and fermented. So one of the things that we've also done that has helped egg production is, and this is tricky because you have to do it right, is we put eggshells back into their feed. So, if we're cooking an omelet and we use up a dozen eggs, we take those shells, and what I've been doing lately is I throw them into a Ziploc bag and I crush them into a fine powder, or pretty fine powder, and then I can put it back into their feed. It gives them calcium for getting stronger eggs. It just gives them, it's healthy for them to eat that eggshell. But what I don't want is an egg eater. I don't want my chickens to be used to eating eggshell, or know that they're eating eggshell, so that they break open eggs and eat them inside the nesting boxes. Because if you have a chicken that's breaking open eggs in your nesting boxes and eating them, chances are you're going to have to get rid of that chicken, because they won't stop. I don't think you can really break a chicken of a habit of eating their eggs once they figure out they can, or once they start to.
Yeah.
So.
And to go along with that too is, if you are going to go that route where you want to give them that extra calcium back in their feed, just make sure with your shells that you bake them in the oven to clean them and bake them in the oven to get rid of any of that leftover raw egg in there. Yeah. So no bacteria starts to develop on that before you give them to your chickens.
One thing that I've also noticed that's directly correlated with egg production is having a plethora of fresh water. It is incredible to me how much water chickens really drink.
Yeah, it's hard in the winter because you have to keep coming out to make sure it's not frozen and keep it replenished and good for them. So
yeah, that being said, they also share an enclosure with 2 goats and now 2 pigs who also drink a lot of water. But throughout the the animal area back there, we've got 4 or 5 water bowls.
Also, to go along that, Vance did a video a while back about 2 water barrels that we put out in our barn, and they're connected together, and we just fill that up on a day when it's not freezing outside. We've been going through it for quite a while though, for 2 barrels. It lasts a long time.
About 3 months, 2 to 3 months every time I fill it up. It's 110 gallons. Yeah, 110 gallons, but I guess I fill it up maybe once a month.
Yeah, but it lasts like that full month, and we have water out here ready to go for our birds. And so just check out that video, because it might be a good option for you guys too. And what he does is he just shines a heat lamp on the tap, on the faucet, the spigot, whatever you want to call it, and it just helps keep it from freezing, so the water comes out great.
Yeah, when I first built the barrels, the faucet would freeze. The barrels wouldn't, but the faucet would freeze, and so we do have a red light heat lamp out there. So
take caution with that. Our barn is not wood. We don't have
very
like
little wood in it.
any
so
wood.
it's-
There's one, I think, a little bit of wood. But anyway, it's mostly metal out there, but we are careful of where we place it and how close it is to everything and all of that. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind. Check out that video on the water barrels.
So talking about a heat lamp or light in your barn, I know that there's always people debating about whether it's right, or I guess ethical, to put a light out in the barn to get better egg production. One of the reasons why we do put a light out there in the winter isn't to overwork the birds and make sure that they're laying through the winter so that we can sell the eggs, because that's not our main priority. But we've discovered a couple of things, and one is if they're not getting a minimum of 15 hours, you won't get any eggs in the winter. We haven't had a whole lot of light in our barn up until I think this winter. And this winter has been really cold, and it just seems to be really dark. And so for the first time, our egg production almost completely stopped. I mean, there were days where we had 3 eggs out of 42 layers, and we would get like 2 to 3 eggs. So we did try putting a light out there, and I know there's a lot of discussion about whether it's ethical to make your birds lay eggs in the winter, or whether it's too taxing on their bodies and things. If a chicken doesn't have a minimum of 15 hours of sunlight, from what I understand, those hormones don't kick in and they just completely stop egg production. And so we put a light out there, but we regulate how often it's on. I turn it on during the day. I leave the light on in the barn, and the reason is because our barn is a converted 10 by 14 foot or 10 by 12 foot metal shed, no windows. So other than the barn doors, it actually stays really dark in there. And because it's so cold right now, some of the birds never leave the barn. They will just jump down onto the straw and make a bed and just kind of stay nice and warm, instead of going out and foraging and doing what they would be doing probably in nature. And so I feel like a lot of our birds were actually getting less sunlight than they would be in a natural environment. So during the day I put a light in, but one of the other reasons why we put a light in there is because chickens are blind. They can't see a thing. And I've noticed that at nighttime, if they have a light, they actually come into the barn so I can close it up. If there isn't a light, sometimes they go and jump in our apple tree, or they hide behind the compost heap, or they go into the pig shelter, or they cuddle up to our goats, but they don't go into the barn. And then I end up, going out at night in the middle of the cold with a mag light, trying to find out where my missing birds are. And so one of the reasons why I leave a light on in the barn is just so that they know where to go, they find their way home, they get in the warm barn at night and they perch, so that I can go in there, count them all, shut the door, and be done for the night. It saves me a lot of time at nighttime having just a light in the barn.
Yeah, and like you said, we only put it on during the day, so it's just, a lot of that really is, like you said, just because our barn is so dark and we just don't get much natural light in there at all.
Okay, and the only thing I have left is, it's funny but true, but keeping their feet dry. I remember Christy told me that keeping their feet dry helps egg production, and I remember you telling me, like, I don't know why, but I've heard it helps.
Heard it randomly.
Well, it's true. For some reason,
For us, anyway, we've seen that.
we found it to be true. When their feet are dry, I don't know if it's because they're happier and they're more in the mood to lay an egg, but when their feet are dry and warm, egg production goes up for us. And so what we've started to do is make sure that we have a nice, deep, fresh hay inside the barn, so that as they come into the barn, they can wipe off any mud or whatever that's on their feet. They can get their feet dry, and when they jump up into their nesting boxes, they have nice, clean, warm feet. And for some reason, they lay more eggs.
Yeah.
I don't know the science behind it.
May not be a firm reality in any way whatsoever. It may just be coincidental to other factors coming into play with the timing of trying to help their feet stay dry. We're not sure on the science of it in any way. We're just saying that from our experience, it seems to be something that might work. And so we do what we can to try and help aid with their feet staying dry as much as possible.
That's all I got.
So I hope you guys have enjoyed this chicken video that we've done for you tonight. It is getting dark out here. It's time to wrap it up. It is freezing, but we hope that these chicken tips have helped you, whether you currently have chickens or you're looking into getting chickens in the future. We wish you the best of luck with your chickens, and thanks for joining us tonight.
I feel like we're far from experts, but this is what we've learned. So.
Yep. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.